AV Shop Talk, Episode 10.
Podcasting from Boston, Massachusetts and Los Angeles, California, this is AV Shop Talk. Covering the latest audiovisual trends and emerging technologies, this is where the AV pros come to talk shop. With your hosts, Nate Schneider and Jason Griffin.
Welcome to AV Shop Talk. My name is Nate Schneider, and I'm joined by my colleague out on the West Coast, Jason Griffin. How are you tonight, Jason?
Doing very well, Nate. How are you?
I'm doing well. We had a rough night with the 2-year-old last night. She decided to wake up probably about 17 times in the middle of the night for no apparent reason. So,
And this is the 2-year-old.
This is the two. Yeah. So the
you have a newborn as well.
Yeah, almost a 2-month-old that is sleeping well now, or sleeping as well as a 2-month-old can sleep.
Yeah, well being a relative term.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things where she's just screaming and screaming and screaming, and you go in there and you're like, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" And she's like, "I have a question." You're like, "Okay, what's your question?" And I need a blanket. My eyelash hurts. It's like, come on. I need to get up.
It's a good thing, you love them so much, right?
Yeah. I heard a quote saying it's like the hardest job that you'll love, or something like that. It's the hardest job you'll ever have that you'll love the most, or something along those lines. So it seemed to strike a chord.
I will know soon enough here.
Yeah.
I'm sort of on pins and needles at my house right now.
Yeah, at the time of this recording, you are a day, your wife is a day overdue at this point?
She is 1 day past her due date as of, like you said, our recording session here. And so very excited. Not going to lie, a little bit nervous. It's our first child. So it's always, you get that feeling and you don't really know what to expect. And I'll be honest, I mean, right now it almost doesn't even seem real. And I think that it'll really just be that kind of drive to the hospital where it's probably all going to really sink in,
Yeah, it's funny for the fathers out there. It gets real when you see the baby. At least for me. I mean, you go through labor and your wife is like, been carrying the baby for months, and they're very much in tune to what's happening. But as a husband, you can kind of go on cruise control, and then when you see that head pop out, cut the umbilical cord, man, it just hits you like a ton of bricks. At least for me, it was just like overwhelming.
Yeah, but, I'm sure.
Anyway, I'm excited for you to be going through this right now, and it is a very cool experience. So we wish you,
definitely, you
guys the best.
We're super excited, and speaking of being excited, glad to be sitting down with you here tonight. We had a conversation with actually an old college friend of yours, Keith Martin, from Game Creek Video, and excited to share that with our audience.
Yeah, that's right. So Keith, I think he graduated a year behind me. So we were in some of the same classes, but definitely in the halls of UMass Lowell together. So definitely cool to reconnect with him and hear how his career path developed, and what he's doing at Game Creek, and very, very cool stuff, working at a lot of NFL games, NASCAR, all kinds of big sporting events in the broadcast world, and everything is mobile. They got to pack everything up and travel all over the country, and it's a little bit different than the world of integration, but still very much a related field. I mean, I always hear about guys coming from the broadcast world going into integration, or the opposite way. People will leave an integration firm and go work for a local broadcast company or something along those lines. So it's cool to stay in tune to see what the other side of the industry is up to. Yeah,
no, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all ins and outs, right?
That's right.
But
gazintas and gazadas.
I was excited. Yeah, exactly. This definitely, I felt like, was sort of a step out of maybe like our typical guest wheelhouse, but I was excited for that because, like we've talked about it before, I'm a huge sports fan. I know you're into sports as well, and I watch a lot of football on TV, and I've always kind of had this inkling or general understanding that the work that goes on behind the scenes to take that live sporting event and turn it into, primetime television there's got to be just a massive amount of work to that. And sometimes it kind of seems like it must be magic or something, just the level of production that these guys are pulling off week in and week out. And that's, I think, why I was so excited to have Keith on, was just to get a glimpse into that world and really, get a better understanding for what it takes to get these live sporting events that we love to watch and get them to your TV.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those conversations where, man, we could have probably gone on for an hour or two just chatting about the technology and how it's used and different, the signal flow. At one point, Keith gets into, some of the signal flow about, getting from the camera to, what's called a shed, and, talks about like, SMPTE hybrid connections and all kinds of cool stuff, including 4K cameras. And it was, it's a lot to take in, but, I definitely learned a lot about the industry too, and just kind of how integration actually serves the broadcast world. And that was kind of a neat thing. It's one of the things I think I'm becoming more interested in, or more in tune to, is kind of like niche markets or verticals within integration, rather than your general, AV integration house. But like, I'm definitely interested in learning more about these little niche markets that serve very specialized segments of the industry. And this is definitely one that popped up on my radar after this conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we did cover a lot of ground in the interview, and again, I thought it was very interesting. So hopefully our listeners enjoy that conversation. Before we jump into that, just wanted to send out a quick thanks to everybody who's tuning in. We really appreciate it. If you're enjoying the show, definitely take a minute to hop over to avshoptalk.com, maybe leave us a comment. We're definitely open to suggestions. We also have a SpeakPipe page, which I know we've been excited to kind of get some participation on, and people can check that out if they go to avshoptalk.com/speakpipe. And that'll give you a chance to just leave us a voicemail. You can leave a message up to 90 seconds, and we'll feature it on a future show. And you can make a suggestion, make a comment, ask a question. We would definitely love to hear from you.
Yeah, that would be great. So definitely take advantage of the SpeakPipe thing, and it could be a great place to, or a great opportunity to hear your own voice on a future episode, and plug your blog or organization or Twitter handle, and it'd be great to connect with you and just kind of build community among the AV pros that are out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, let's jump right on to the interview with Keith Martin of Game Creek.
AV Shop Talk.
We are pleased to welcome our guest, Keith Martin. He comes from the world of video broadcast. He works for a company up in New Hampshire called Game Creek Video. And, I've been looking forward to touching base with Keith because we are college buddies. We went to the same school, UMass Lowell, and went to the same program, sound recording technology program. So, Keith, welcome to the AV Shop podcast. How are you doing tonight?
I'm well. Glad to be here.
Good. Yeah. So I think this would be a good time to just kind of mention a little bit about the UMass Lowell program. I think sound recording technology, I don't know if you want to tell your story about how you got to where you are, but Keith is the engineer in charge of Game Creek's FX HD multi-million-dollar team of 5 remote television production studios on wheels. That's kind of a mouthful, but Keith is going to explain a little bit about what he does and give us an insight into the world of broadcast, which Jason is also on the call. We don't come from the world of broadcast, obviously. We're more integrators, but this stuff is very interesting to us. We're huge football fans, and Keith travels to a lot of football shows, among other things. But before we get more into that, Keith, do you want to share a little bit of your story about how you got to be called an engineer in charge? I mean, I think you started off working for this company maybe as an intern repairing cables. Is that right?
Well, no. So when I started at Game Creek, I came in. I was working in the shop. Basically, when I finished my internship for my sound recording degree, I moved out to LA, and I was working in audio post. I was working at a post house called Gray Martin Studios in Santa Monica. Okay. And we were doing a lot of reality television there. and I was an intern. I was doing the grocery shopping, and I was emptying trash cans, and I was sitting in on a lot of sessions, but not really getting a whole lot of hands-on time.
Making a lot of coffee.
Oh, lots of coffee. I was really good at making coffee. But then I was also working nights for Activision on Guitar Hero World Tour. I was doing QA testing for them.
Wow.
And so I was working for them 12 hours overnight, 7 days a week, and then doing like 8 hours at the studio 3 days a week. So like it was a solid 6 months of sleeping every other day while the sun was up.
Wow.
So that got really old really fast. Another UML alum happened to be working in the shop at Game Creek, and someone had just moved on, and so he got in touch with me, and I packed all my stuff into the car, drove across the country in like 3.5 days, and
Wow.
and went and interviewed. So I started out building cable, putting shipments together, sending things out to shows all over the country, not really having like the big picture of what I was actually involved in.
So let me just recap. So you went out to LA, you did the classic, people that go through sound recording technology, they either go to, New York, Los Angeles, maybe Nashville
Yep.
to try to work in a recording studio. You did that for a while, and then you had this opportunity and you just did an about face and headed right back to the East Coast. And so it sounded like you were doing a lot of logistical stuff, like just kind of making sure everything was packed and people had what they needed for certain, sporting events. It was primarily sporting events, right?
Yeah, I mean that's really Game Creek's main focus is production facilities catered toward live sports production.
Okay.
Yeah, I've done a few some events that are not sports related, but I'll get into a little bit of that later.
Okay.
But yeah, so after a few months of being the cable monkey and getting really good at driving a fork truck,
Yeah.
I got the opportunity to start being like a third assist engineer on shows in the Boston area.
Okay.
And that was really a big eye opener. I mean, like up to that point, I had seen the trucks not powered in the shop, and I was loading cases onto the back of the truck before they left, and that was kind of it. But then to go out and just see how it was all done was just really, really exciting.
You see the magic.
Yeah.
See where the magic happens. And to if anybody's listening to this and they want to see, what Keith is talking about right now, we'll post a YouTube video in the show notes. This will be at avshoptalk.com/episode 10. And actually, I think it's a Grass Valley video. It's called Game Creek Video with GV Switchers at Super Bowl 48.
Yep.
And if you want to get a quick visualization about what Keith is talking about, what he's doing here, these are pretty serious trucks here.
Yeah.
It's just kind of awesome. Basically, that's the only way I can describe it. It's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I think that video was I think that was down in the New Orleans Super Bowl. So that was 47.
Did I say 48?
It's all right.
Yeah.
48 was my baby. But
oh yeah, we'll get more into that later. Yeah.
But there's also a really cool video that was on The Verge that is all about football production. It kind of blew up in the broadcast world. Like it was kind of like all over Facebook amongst all the people that I know that are in broadcast. But it was actually our football crew when we were in Foxborough doing a Patriots game last season.
Oh, you'll have to send me a link to
I
that
will
so we can
absolutely
include
do that
in the show notes too, because I think I remember seeing it now and I couldn't find it. I tried to look it up.
Yeah.
But we'll definitely include that if you can send the link over.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we've talked about your personal background and kind of your journey into to working with Game Creek. I'd like to maybe zoom out for just a second and talk about kind of Game Creek as a company. I think that kind of understanding the business of Game Creek will kind of help our listeners understand really the kind of service and the value that you guys are providing. So can you touch just from a high level on, what is Game Creek Video, where are you guys located, and kind of what's really just from a high level your business? Who are your customers?
So Game Creek Video is the second largest mobile TV production studio truck company in the United States, and we provide remote television facilities to a whole wide variety of clients: Fox, ESPN, NBC, CBS. We've got a whole bunch of local contracts: Yes Network, Nesson, Masson, SNY, which is the Mets as well. It seems like we're growing pretty quickly. When I started at the company, we probably had 12 trucks in the fleet, and as of June, we will have officially doubled in size.
Wow. Yeah, and it's like Nate said and alluded to, these are very impressive trucks. I've watched some of the videos and just kind of the amount of technology and equipment that goes into these productions is really, it's kind of breathtaking actually for somebody who, like Nate said, he and I are both big football fans, and so we've seen your handiwork. I'm actually an avid Denver Broncos fan, so Super Bowl 48 was a very tough day for me.
A tough thing to watch.
Yeah. But the production was great. I mean, and I just think that's really cool. So I'm actually, and I know we want to kind of talk technology, but what is the relationship like between? I'm just curious about this, how it works. So when you guys go out to do an NFL game, and you have, kind of multiple people involved. You got Game Creek Video, and you've got the NFL, and you've got, whatever network it is, say ESPN.
Sure.
Are you guys kind of working for ESPN, and they're kind of the go-between maybe between you and the NFL, or are you working for the NFL? Like, does that question kind of make sense? I mean, who is
it really
really
does, yeah. So the way that it works in our case is, we're a vendor. So we have a contract with, in my case, with the truck I'm running, we have a contract with Fox, and Fox is the rights holder. They have bought the rights to so many games from the NFL. So we provide the facilities for the games that Fox has contracted us to cover, and then so Game Creek goes out. Basically, we send the trucks, and we send a small team of engineers along with them. We're effectively the insurance policy that comes with the trucks. So Fox will then go ahead and contract a crew of freelancers, camera operators, replay operators, audio mixers, and those are the guys that are doing all the hard work. all the hard work that you guys see and hear is coming from these very talented people that I have the good fortune of working with every week. And I'm there to support them and make sure that what we're providing does the job that it's designed to do, and then also we've got these production teams, producers, directors who are not necessarily looking to get. My team is really responsible for making all that technology that we have completely invisible to the creative people.
Sure.
Oh, see, I'm glad you spelled that out, because in my mind, I'm thinking, how does this actually work? And so it almost sounds like if I were to go to like a rental car company and rent a vehicle or something, I mean, it's almost like it's the same business model, only you've got like millions of dollars of equipment on your rental vehicles that happen to be big trucks. And so you make sure that the truck works properly, it's functioning, it's up to date, the technology just works seamlessly, so that the third party, or I guess we could call them third party or the contractors that can come in and do the creative production. They come in and use your piece of machinery, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's good. That's a good question, Jason.
I try.
Oh man, so now I have like a good idea of what you guys do and the market that you serve and everything. And so how many years did you kind of do like the packing and getting things ready before getting the trucks ready to go out the door before you actually traveled with the truck to make sure everything was intact? What was that process like? How many years did that take you to get to doing that?
In my case, I feel like it was very accelerated. I was only working in the shop for about 9 months before I got my first opportunity to go out on the road.
Wow.
I had worked in the shop, and then we went through a truck build, which is kind of like the most intense time to be at the shop every year. Because I mean, and again, I mean, it was a lot of, shipping and receiving and things like that are not exactly exciting, but it was also really cool to be involved in this empty shell of a truck shows up, and then a few months later, it's not so empty. It's ready to make television.
Yeah, you kind of feel like it's your baby if you're there from like ground zero, right? You kind of see every little piece come together. And then, it does make sense because it's like, who better to send out with the truck than, the guy that like put every nut and bolt together and ran miles of cable in this tiny little space, so that kind of makes sense.
I mean, we actually, there's another company that is, that they do all the integration for us on site. So we purchase all the equipment and put wire lists together, and basically hand the plan over to the integrators. They have a whole team of guys that actually install the gear, wire it all up, and then the engineers that are assigned to that truck are there for the whole testing process. They go through and check every single connector, every single wire in the truck.
Okay.
And then, when problems are found, that's handed back off to the integration team, and then it's corrected, it's rechecked. We're talking, thousands and thousands of wires, and usually you can count on one hand how many mistakes there were. It's really good.
That's so interesting to me because I just am always fascinated by how focused you can be in this industry, and there's so many little niches. Are these integration companies that are coming in and doing these trucks, to your knowledge, is that all they do? Are they just specialized on actually doing installation inside of these broadcast trucks?
Yeah, the people that do the integration for us, and I guess I can really only speak to them because I haven't really we've been using the same company for as long as I've been there. But yeah, I mean they're actually pretty much stationed in our facility 9 months out of the year.
Wow. Yeah, so I got to imagine that it's really interesting seeing one of these trucks come together, and I think that now would be a good time. Maybe we can move out into the field and kind of follow your path, right? So now you've kind of moved out into the field, and your current position is the engineer in charge. And maybe you can walk us through what kind of maybe a typical production looks like. I'm sure they're all very unique in their own ways, but when you're called out to do a production, I know before we started recording tonight, you were talking about a recent trip overseas to do the NFL game over in London, and maybe you can kind of just touch on what that process looks like. I know that one was a little unique, but what is this when you're actually out in the field doing the production? Kind of what's going on inside of the truck?
So on a typical show, the trucks will park. Every truck has the side expands out and to make more room for, it's more people space. And So we'll set the inside of the truck. We'll run power to the house or the generator, depending on what is available or what is required for the show. And then usually about that point, that's when the crew will start to the network crew will start to show up, and we will dish out cable and cameras, all these things that we carry with us from city to city. We dish all that gear out. The camera guys go in, they build their cameras, and then ideally, by lunchtime, we've started to see video feeds popping up in the truck. Most of the venues that we're going to have a decent infrastructure as far as wiring goes, so we don't have to cable every venue everywhere that we go. It's usually just every camera position is predefined, and there is a panel up at that position that feeds down to a central truck IO. That we then run cable from the truck to the venue IO.
So I would imagine these internal tie lines happen to be either HDSDI, 3G SDI. I think SMPTE just came out with a 12G SDI standard. But is that what you guys are running around the facility?
With the cameras, we're using SMPTE fiber or triax to ship the camera signal back and forth.
Okay.
So SMPTE fiber, if you're not familiar, is a single connector with 2 fibers in it and 2 copper connectors in it as well, in order to provide one fiber is a send to the camera, which gives it intercom returns to the viewfinder, and then the second fiber sends the video signal back to the truck, and then the copper obviously powers the whole system.
Yeah. Okay. I think I remember seeing. I can't remember the name of it. I think it was in the Neutric booth at Infocom 2014.
Yeah.
There were some really cool hybrid connectors, kind of housed in something that looked like an XLR barrel, but there's really 2 fibers and a copper, as you mentioned, kind of jammed into this really cool looking mechanical connector that I had never seen before. I imagine you work with these all the time.
Yeah, I mean, we've got miles of this stuff that we carry around in the truck.
Yeah.
And so then the other thing that we'll do sometimes, because not every venue, basically depending on the age of the venue, SMPTE fiber connectivity isn't always available. Mm-hmm. So the other thing that we do is we'll run single mode fiber, which is we can put a tactical fiber mult out, which will just be ST fiber ends, and then we used devices called sheds, which is a SMPTE hybrid elimination device. Basically what it does is on the truck end, it plugs into the IO, which feeds into the base station for the camera, which is where we're actually taking the HDSDI from the camera. It comes off of this, it's like a 4RU brain for the whole system, basically. Mm-hmm. But what the shed does is it eliminates the need to send power along the SMPTE.
Okay.
So basically, at the camera end, you take a SMPTE off of the camera, you go to the HDX box, which is the camera end of the shed system, and then out of that box, which is powered, just 120 volts off of the house. Mm-hmm. Just 2 ST fiber come off of that, and basically every venue has ST fiber connectivity everywhere, so we're able to ship signals easily that way. And then at the truck end, it then feeds into the end of the shed that plugs back into the truck, and then we're able to take that signal, and that converts it back to a SMPTE connector, which feeds into the base station, and then we take the HDSCI out and feed it into the router, which then we pass that signal to the switcher where the buttons are pressed, and it goes to air.
Wow. Okay. So this is great for all the signal flow buffs out there that are trying to figure out how the signal actually gets from point A to point B. There will be a quiz, and it will count on your permanent record. Anyone listening to this podcast, we will quiz you on what you just heard. So we hope you paid very close attention. But no, this is exactly what I love to talk about. I love to hear about. It's all very fascinating to me. Now, what you just described, was that at a typical, any given Sunday Super Bowl? NFL game, or is that like a typical setup? What you just described?
It is for the show that I'm doing every week. Yes, it's very typical. I think if you're doing, say, like a Celtics game or Bruins game, you can tell I'm from the Boston area. Tend to see more triacs, which is a 3-conductor copper connection.
Okay.
It's basically a really beefy coax cable with one more connector in it, and we'll ship the signal from the camera back down to the truck with that. The cameras that we use, the Sony 1500s, are very versatile in that you can just like pull the side off the camera where the triax connector is. You remove that side, you grab a SMPTE connector side and install that in place of it, and it's just like one connector ready to go. It's really great. Very modular.
Yeah, I think this is all like super interesting to me. I've got to imagine that it's the variety of venues that you guys are working at and covering. I've got to imagine it's almost like probably a full-time job to sort of understand the particular stadium or venue that you're going to and kind of what that infrastructure is going to provide, because obviously when you get there, you've got to have a ton of gear with you, and you really need to have everything there. You guys are always remote. And how does that process work? Is there sort of a database that you guys are kind of tapped into, or is it just something that you kind of learn by being in the trade? Like, how does that work?
The truck that I'm working on, and with the scale of the football games that I'm doing every week, the truck that I'm on is just kind of it's very beefed up. Uh-huh. We carry a whole lot more than we actually need on any given week, especially when it comes to fiber optics, because when we're not doing football, we're doing NASCAR. Gotcha. So with NASCAR, the cameras can be miles from the truck. Right. And that's actually the biggest reason why we have all the sheds that we do, is because we can't necessarily. It's so much easier to run a centimeter in diameter tactical fiber mult than it is to run a SMPTE fiber, which only transports one camera with a connector that's an inch in diameter. Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like it's standardized enough that you sort of have your tool bag and your standard kind of operating procedures, and then you obviously have to adapt a little bit depending on the venue you're at. But really, you guys are kind of like all inclusive in your truck, and you pretty much feel like whatever venue you head off to, you guys are going to have what you need to cover that.
Yeah, we're prepared for most anything, but then we're also communicating with the video team and the audio team as far as like what their needs are. So if we do need something, we can get it sent in. But for the most part, we're really covered by what we already have on the truck.
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned NASCAR, and
Yes.
I think you said at like an NFL game, you'd be up and running and seeing video feeds start to happen at like noon. Now, with NASCAR, I imagine that's got to be a little bit different. Is that what's the setup time like for a typical like NASCAR event?
So with NASCAR, like I'll travel in on a Tuesday. We'll set the truck on Wednesday. With NASCAR, like the truck compound is massive. It's like, I mean, we're talking just in the broadcast compound alone, probably 20 or so trucks.
Wow.
Because you've got all the different rights holders and vendors. There's just so much going on. But in that particular case, the cameras start getting built on Wednesday. But we're really not expecting to see anything until usually Thursday morning.
Okay, so now you're talking multiple days. To
Oh
get
yeah,
this.
yeah. I mean, basically the races are on Sunday. We'll start. We'll have like our first transmission test on Friday, and then some. Excuse me. Some content that airs on Fox Sports 1 later on Friday, and then more content on Saturday, and then the big race on Sunday.
Gotcha. Now, before we start to wrap things up here with this interview, I did want to touch on 4K because I think last year's Super Bowl, Super Bowl 48, was actually the first one where there was quote 4K at the Super Bowl, and I think from talking with you before, there were 55 cameras.
There were,
and yeah, that's a lot of cameras. There's a lot of bandwidth being pumped around there. And I guess my question is, how are these higher resolution video formats being used currently? Because in the consumer world, in the systems integration world, 4K is largely limited by bandwidth caps of HDMI or DisplayPort. But in the broadcast world, you've got a little bit more bandwidth to play with.
Right.
That said, it can't be delivered to the end user per se. So I guess my question to you is, how is 4K being used today?
The key thing with 4K right now is that its niche is in replay. Basically, we can put out 4K cameras and capture that high resolution, but in the end, it's not going to look any better to you at home, right? So,
Right.
But what we gain is the ability to zoom in on a picture, and Fox, we're broadcasting at 720p, so we can dive deep into that image, which usually is a very wide shot. We'll put it up in like one of the end zones and shoot the entire width of the field. And then when it comes time for a play, if you ever see like what they call they brand it as like the Fox Super Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
That's a 4K camera. What you're seeing is that image, they'll stop, they zoom in on it, but you don't lose any resolution because it's a 4K image to begin with, and the end user's resolution is 720p. So you can get a very, very clear replay out of 4K.
Okay, that's what I thought. I remember reading about it, and before we actually scheduled this interview, I remember chatting on the phone with you, kind of about this very topic, and it was interesting to me to see how 4K is actually being used today, and that does seem like a very good use case. So you could capture the whole end zone in a wide shot, and then you can zoom in basically to the lower 25% or the lower maybe left-hand quadrant to see what's going on down in that particular part of the field, and the end result is still going to be 1080 or 720p signal even after you've zoomed in by that amount. So that seems like a very good use case. Now, were all 55 cameras 4K at Super Bowl 48?
No, so we had 6 4K cameras, 2 of which were manned and 4 of which were robotic. All of them were Sony F55s, and that gave us we were able to cover every line with those cameras, which was the big that was the biggest goal with having that many 4K cameras. It's I guess is mostly the reason, if we could have done 55 4K cameras, maybe we would have, but just the logistics of it, like there's so many more signals to pass around when you're dealing with 4K than if you're dealing with 1080i or 720p.
Yeah, I bet. And it's just a lot more logistics going on, a lot more bandwidth to manage. It's just a lot more of everything to try to figure out if you're doing a show of that scale, that magnitude.
Right. So I mean, because basically what it amounts to is like one 4K camera chain. You've got a 4RU camera base station, which is going to pump out a 720p output, a down-converted output, for us to use as a live camera. Then you've got a BPU, which breaks out that 4K signal into 4 3G 1080p quadrants. And then we ship those 4 quadrants to an EVS XT3, which is our replay device. And that we put 4 quadrants in, and then from there, the 4 outputs of that get pushed into a scaler, which scales that image back down to 720p. And then we take that one output and put that into the switcher so that we can take the live, we can take the replay to air.
So you guys really are using 4K right now, but obviously we've still got some hurdles to clear before we're actually seeing it in our living room. And I'm going to ask you just to maybe, with some insider knowledge here, look into your crystal ball and make a prediction. Like, do you have a general feel for kind of how long it's going to be before 4K is really kind of the standard, what we're seeing in our living room at home, assuming you think that's going to be the case? Do you have any feel for how far away we are from that in terms of the technology and just the adoption?
Jason, I can't believe you used the term crystal ball. I got to tell Mike Brandis about this, because it's one of the buzzwords of the industry that just doesn't go away. But anyway, sorry, I had to throw that out there.
So with 4K, I have a hard time believing that it's going to be anytime soon, because we're still not broadcasting in 1080p.
Right.
Nobody is. So I think, 1080p may get bypassed altogether as a broadcast standard. I think 4K is a major buzzword right now, but just like being at NAB this past year, there's 8K is being pushed, and I think everybody is just like trying to get the to win the resolution war right now, and it's just, I don't know. It's gonna be a while before the home can accommodate the bandwidth necessary to actually view it without it being so compressed that the integrity of it is compromised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we think back to 2009, I'm pretty sure that's when we switched over from the old school NTSC model to ATSC, digital over-the-air transmission. I wonder how much over-the-air technology is going to be driving this, or if that's just, it seems like the natural jump would just be to go deliver this content, this high-res content over, over the internet,
Yeah, I mean, I think packets are the way of the future,
Yep.
Um,
Just a matter of syncing those, because you have audio and video data that needs to be in sync and arrive at the same time. And
right.
packets weren't really intended for that from the get-go. I mean,
right.
It's starting to. There's ways to do it. It's happening, but it is an interesting development. I don't know, Jason, did you have anything else? Any final questions here before we wrap things up?
No, I actually think I got a much better understanding now for what happens. I've always kind of had an inkling that what goes on behind the scenes of the football games that I'm watching would be interesting to me, but it's sort of this dark art when you're looking in from the outside. As an AV professional and somebody who works in audiovisual, I understand that there's got to be a ton of just work going on behind the scenes to sort of make that all happen. And I think it's been really interesting, Keith, to have you come on and sort of shed some light on what that world looks like and kind of how you guys operate. And I appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Thanks for having me. I'll keep you guys informed of my schedule. So if it ever works out that I'm in your area, I would love to have you guys come on in.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
I'd be totally up for that. That'd be super cool. And I'm sure I'd see a lot of familiar faces. In fact, I hear that the new truck is named after a certain school's mascot. So
yeah. So there are 12 UML alumni that work at Game Creek Video at this point. I think 9 of which, maybe 10, I think it's 10 of which are SRT alumni.
Wow.
But yeah, so in June we rolled out a new truck for CBS, which is named Riverhawk.
Very cool.
And yeah, so that truck is it did a studio show for like the first, I want to say 8 Thursday night games, and then it's also doing a Sunday game every week for CBS as well.
Awesome. And just so people know, Riverhawk is the mascot of UMass Lowell, and it is the only hawk with teeth, in case you were curious. Well, Keith, we got to wrap things up here. It's getting to the end of our time, but we do appreciate you. I'll echo what Jason said. We appreciate you taking the time, and we do want to keep in touch. And if we have any questions about the broadcast world, we know who to ask. It sounds like you've got the signal flow just kind of ingrained into your head. It just kind of spews out randomly. So we appreciate hearing how the systems come together and just a little bit of insight into the world of broadcast. So thanks for coming on the show. Is there any social media you wanted to plug in case people want to follow you or tweet you or anything like that? Do you want to throw out anything?
Yeah, sure. I'm on Twitter, Keith Martin 322. Follow me there. I'm not the best Twitter poster. I'm not all that great at Twitter, but hey,
you have an account. That's the start.
You can follow me, and then dead silence.
All right. Well, we'll know who to look up then. We'll start harassing you on Twitter now.
Sounds good.
All right, and so that was it for our conversation with Keith Martin, and we just want to one more time extend a big thank you to Keith for coming on the show, and we hope that you enjoyed the conversation. Yeah,
definitely. Thank you for listening. We really appreciate you taking the time to support this podcast just by listening to it. And we wanted to tell you about the next episode of AV Shop Talk Live, which is our supplementary video cast, if you will. So we do these audio only interviews once a month, but in addition to that, we've started firing up the old YouTube channel, and we broadcast live every once in a while. And Jason, maybe you can tell our listeners a little bit about what we're going for with AV Shop Talk Live.
Yeah, we've done a couple of episodes, and we go on, we do a hangout on air. We've had some panelists on.
previous episodes to just sort of kick around some high level topics. And I think we've had some great feedback on it, and we really enjoy doing it. And we're going to make an effort to, put one of those live episodes out once a month. And I think the way that I see it is that we really enjoy these podcasts where we get to have one guest come on and just really like dive deep into one topic. Mm-hmm. But the AVST Live, the AV Shop Talk Live episodes that we do, it's a good chance to just kind of get on and talk about the latest news and, again, some high-level topics, maybe conceptual stuff in the industry that's going on and best practices. And it's also a good opportunity to sort of be interactive. The Hangouts on air allow you to do Q&A, and we really encourage people to tune into the live event. We will be live, and we want your questions, so you can hop on the Q&A, and we will address questions as they come up.
Yeah, that's what I think is so cool about Google Hangouts on Air is the whole live thing is pretty cool, that anyone with a webcam and a web browser can basically broadcast live video anywhere in the world. It's not always the most high definition picture, but it's free. True. So you take what you
Can't
can
complain.
get. But it's the live interaction that I think kind of it differentiates from the television experience, where you're just kind of consuming whatever the big networks decide to throw at you. I really like the interactive component of it, like you said, with the Q&A, and you can tweet us at AV Shop Talk, and we'll be monitoring those tweets so we can include your comments and questions as part of the show and part of the discussion. So the next AV Shop Talk Live will be December 3rd at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And what is December 3rd? I just closed my calendar. I think December 3rd
is a Wednesday.
It is a Wednesday night. I should have known that. So anyway, yeah, exactly.
Kind of something to break up the work week a little bit.
Yeah. So anyway, if you're around December 3rd, feel free to join us. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, definitely. And we hope to have you there. And again, just thank you for taking the time to listen to AV Shop Talk. We hope you're enjoying the show, and definitely give us a follow over on Twitter at AV Shop Talk, and let us know how we're doing.
All right. Thank you for listening, and we will talk shop with you in the next episode of AV Shop Talk. AV Shop Talk is produced independently by Jason Griffin and myself, Nate Schneider. Voiceover talent coming from John Perry, and those musical contributions that you're listening to right now are coming from Colin Owens.
AV Shop Talk